Alright, so what is the best loadout for the new Jujutsu Kaisen dungeon? Let's find out. Alright, so before we get started, heads up, my loadout right now is not the best loadout. I'm just using other units that I put in like a list of which ones would be the best for these dungeons. And I've kind of like subjected them to the enemies inside there, so they prioritize those type of enemies. But let's go inside Infinite. Okay, so I already have my defense down. And alright, the reason why I'm using Infinite is because they both have the same map. You know, the parade and the womb. They all use the Jujutsu Kaisen one, so it doesn't really matter. But we'll get started with the money unit. So the best money units you really want to have is either Bulma and Speedwagon or both. So Bulma, of course, has the most money out of the two, but Speedwagon is the easier one to place. But if you get both at the same time, you could prioritize getting money, which means you prioritizing your upgrade. So if you have a unit that costs a lot of money, like Gojo, you can place down Bulma and Speedwagon while other people defend for you. I recommend finding people in Discord who are actually reliable in defending, or maybe ones that want to give you first place if you're aiming for that. Unless you're like a support type person, then this one doesn't really matter. But if you do have Bulma and Speedwagon at the same time, you will get so much money at wave like 10, 15, depends on which dungeon you're at. Probably on like 15 with Parade and 10, 12 with Womb if you could pull it off. Then you'd have so much money that you could upgrade any unit that you want. Now, that's gonna take up 2 slots, but it doesn't really matter because you only really need 1 damage unit or 2 damage units, and the rest could be support or money units. Speaking of support, let's move on to the support units that I recommend. So, number 1, of course, I have Gray. Gray hit airs and ground units. I recommend getting supports that do hit both type of units. And now that we can go towards units and then put them on specific enemies like flying, yeah, support like Gray is gonna be really useful because, of course, stun, long AoE, or long range and big AoE, so you can't go wrong. And you can place this guy down, you can place 4 of them down, and you don't really have to upgrade. They're just there to support. Second off, I have Kisuke. If you have enough money and you want to get the Kisuke buff, go ahead. I don't really recommend it. I would rather go for the other 2, which I'll recommend later on. But Gray is definitely number 1 just because he has a stun. But Kisuke, you could put him up with maybe Gon, since he'll have more range and lower SPA if you put him on max. So you could definitely pair up Kisuke with a lot of units. But would it be efficient? Who knows? Only the people who actually use him would know. But besides that, I have guild arts. So in these dungeons, in these raids, whatever you want to call it, they have enemies that actually have shield and air units like the bees, or maybe ground units that have healing, or ground units that have extra health bars, or the ground units that have extra speed. So there's a lot of units that have, or enemies that have a lot of stat buffs. So guild arts or multi-hit units are going to be really useful. So I recommend guild art just because he does hit air and ground, plus he removes all the shield if you have him evolved. So if you have any enemies that have shields, especially those bees, since they all have shields, you could remove the shields and then have an air or hybrid unit take care of the airs. You know, it's gonna be really useful if you have guild arts up in there, and you don't really have to upgrade him. He still depletes them pretty easily. So yeah, another support unit for the bag. And then the last 2, I have Erwin and Sakura, and the only reason why I have them on there is mostly damage buff, but you can have Erwin for early defense because there are really fast little gremlins that get past sometimes. So if you have Erwin, you have some horses, upgrade them, they can take care of them pretty easily. But I just recommend those 2 if you want to have some supports that do have a damage boost instead of like stunning or giving other buffs besides damage. So yeah, I recommend those 5 right there. Now let's move on to the main damage part, which I'm gonna split it up into 2: ground units and air units. I'll start with ground. So for ground unit, I have Gojo, Yuta, Nanami, Ezra, Valkyrie or Urza Valkyrie, Gon, and Natsu. So Gojo, of course, he has that long, thick line of AoE, very low SPA, and insane damage. I put him at number 1 if you do want to have a good dungeon comp, because even though he's expensive, if you have Speedwagon and Bulma, you're gonna be able to upgrade him pretty easily. And then if you put him in the lining of somewhere around here in these little side areas, he's gonna hit everything in this line and do so much damage. You're gonna be number 1 every single time. Like, it's not even funny how much damage Gojo does. It's crazy. And similarly to Gojo, I have Yuta. Yuta is very like it's like a swappable with Gojo if you don't have him. But Yuta, very similar, thick line of AoE and great damage as well. I would still put Gojo above him because even though he has, I think, better base damage for Yuta when maxing him out, Gojo with them eyes and having him evolved, plus if you have cursed fingers and you could put it on Gojo, it's out of this world. It's broken. It's way broken. But yeah, Gojo, Yuta at the top. And now let's move down the list. So I have Nanami, of course, Nanami right here. Cone AoE, so you can place him in the corners, but he has 50% crit, overtime, low SPA, and a ton of damage for a secret unit. So I recommend Nanami if you don't have those other 2 at the top. But you don't want to stick all to ground. so be careful. You want to have some hybrid in there as well, so you can hit some air, just if you want to get on #1 leaderboard to get that extra rewards, because people sometimes don't prioritize air, because I don't know why they don't do that. But that's besides the point. The other one is Urza Valkyrie. Of course, Valkyrie has a fat AoE and pretty big range, so you could put them maybe right here, so you could hit everything, because all these new units do have massive AoE. They could hit this vicinity, and you know, she is multi-hit, so she could take care of the shields on the ground, and she just has double crit like Nanami, 50% crit plus a ton of damage, so who doesn't like that? And then I have Gon. Gon is still very useful for dungeons because he's easy to place, easy to upgrade. If you want to upgrade him to max, I recommend having Keyskate with him to lower the SPA, but if you don't, it's alright. You're still gonna do a ton of damage even at max, even though it's like a long SPA, since they're not all gonna die pretty instantly at the start, so they're gonna get pretty far if you don't have a good team. And then finally, I have Natsu. Natsu still good burn, low SPA. You could put Gon right here, by the way, hit everything. But for Natsu, I recommend bombarding the front with him because he doesn't have that big of a range in AoE. So place him at the front, bombard him. He still has that burn, low SPA, good damage, so why not? He could take care of shields as well. And now finally, let's move on to the air or hybrid units, whichever you want to call them. So for the air hybrid units, I recommend for #1 having Urza Lightning. This woman goes absolutely crazy. She's very easy to evolve. She has good range, good AoE, and she's a heal unit, right? She does around like 60,000 damage at max. Place that with Sakura and Erwin, you have an easy to evolve, high damaging unit that's placeable basically at the start. Very good replacement for units like Jalal or Miriam or other hybrids like that. And speaking of Jalal, I have him at 2nd place. You know, Jalal is still very good hybrid. He doesn't have that big of a damage scale as Urza early on, but into his later upgrades, he does have a giant damage buff into the 50,000s. But I still recommend Urza above him because, of course, just easy to place down and amazing damage. But you could interchange both of them. For second to last, I have Perfect Cell. I was kind of doubting for Perfect Cell, but honestly, now that I look back, he is a very good heal unit. So if you could place him down, very good. I don't know if a lot of people do have him, since he is a little challenging to get, but if you do have him, hey, go ahead, get your bag, bro. Nobody's going for them airs sometimes, and if you have Cell, well, nobody has airs, you're gonna be up on the leaderboard. And then finally, I have Miriam. Even though he's a little outdated, still a decently good hybrid unit. Plus, he's easy to place down and decent damage as well. So if you can't afford these other ones and you only have Miriam, go ahead and use them. But if you have better ground units, just prioritize that then. But that's just my loadout, or that's just the units that I recommend for a loadout. Now I'm gonna go ahead and pick out of them to basically finish my loadout that I would want in the future for these dungeons. So first of all, I would have both Speedwagon and Bulma, so I could have enough money to, of course, max out anything that I want. So that's 2 slots down. I have 4 more to go. For supports, I choose Gray or Sakura or Gray and Erwin because I want a stun just in case nobody brings one and a damage buff. I probably pick Sakura over Erwin because she's easier to upgrade and that damage boost is basically a passive. But you can choose Erwin for that damage buff right there, even though it's a little higher. He does summon horses. He's still higher to upgrade though, so I don't really want to waste money on him. So that's 4 slots down. And then the other 2, I would have Dojo and Urza Lightning, or maybe Yuta and Jalal. You could swap those 4 from the top 2, honestly, back and forth, and that would be my loadout. But yeah, that's it. Tell me your thoughts in the comments below. Hopefully this helped you out by a little bit. But yeah, you gotta get to grinding, boys. They added so much in these new updates, so I'll see you later.